So coming to so we'll also look at what are the clinical advantages and see how it is executed. So any alignment strategies, you should have 4 perspectives. First, you should understand what are the boundaries. Then you have to understand what is the laxity pattern that it accepts at the end of the procedure. What are the adjustments or where are the adjustments that you make? And what is the limit on the HK alignment? So you can see we've already seen about kinematic alignment being unrestricted, restricted kinematic, adding some restriction as far as the boundaries are concerned. And both these were created to accept the the native laxity of the patient. That is probably in a varus knee, increased lateral laxity and a tighter medial gap. And in both of these, the emphasis is placed on retaining the femoral component in the ideal position and making any changes only in the tibia for adjusting for the gap balancing. Now, functional alignment is also a restricted thing because it has limits on how much valgus or varus you can put on the components, as well as there is a limit on the overall HK alignment. The laxity pattern in this doesn't focus on ensuring native laxity. So in this, the ultimate goal is to have a balanced mediolateral flexion and extension gap. The adjustments in this can be made on both the sides. So you can play around with the positioning of the femur as well in the coronal plane or the axial plane to attain balance. And the limits of the HK overall will be as defined for most of the alignments. So as we saw in the morning, you have the alignment spectrum ranging from mechanical alignment all the way to kinematic. And that is where we have all based on where you can adjust the components. So Faris Haddad from the UK, they were the people who popularized functional alignment as a strategy for balancing knees with robotic assisted techniques. So it was positioned as a balance-driven strategy. So there is an attempt to maintain the native alignment and the native parameters of the knee, but the ultimate goal is to balance the knee. And it is very important to understand that functional alignment cannot be performed with conventional instrumentation. It is an alignment technique which has been described purely based on use of robotics or computer-assisted navigation. So when you come to dynamic balancing, which you're going to see in the case of the upcoming surgery, what you need to understand is the ultimate goal of functional alignment is to pre-balance the knee. Pre-balancing the knee essentially is talking about how you balance the mediolateral gaps. Just try to point it out here. You can see in the bottom right how the gap values show the medial lateral extension and flexion gap. The ultimate goal is to equalize these 4. To equalize these 4 gaps to attain a balanced knee. This has to be done with changes in component positioning only, with least compromise to the soft tissues. So whatever is the resultant alignment within those particular limits is accepted, and it is not the target to restore the CPAC phenotype as far as functional is concerned. So balance is favored. So you can see how the balancing goes on here. With adjustments in the component positioning, you can distalize and proximalize the components, and you will finally aim to give varus or valgus in the femur and tibia to equalize these gaps. So you can see we are giving varus here on the tibia now to bring the lateral gap down, and the Mako system allows you to pivot on either point to open or close the gaps as we want. You can see how we're balancing with rotation. As we're giving rotation, we're pinning medially and rotating externally to close the lateral gap. And this is how we attain a balanced knee. Now the major difference is that alignment is non-negotiable as far as kinematic and restricted kinematic alignment is concerned, and you're accepting the native pattern. So when we started doing functional alignment, in the true sense, we started looking at what the balancing was. We were not looking at the alignment. And when we looked at it post-operatively, we found that we were ignoring the joint line obliquity and we were essentially making it very neutral, whereas it should have been a apex distal with the kinematic or restricted kinematic. So then we started getting some more clarity as far as where the boundaries were. We looked at CPAC phenotypes, and then we started changing the way we started balancing the knee. Because when you balance a knee, as we will show you in the slides leading up to the case, you can either start from a mechanical standpoint and change the component positioning, or you can start from a kinematic start point. So these are the boundaries which were essentially described and popularized by Sebastian Lustig and very common in the European circles about the boundaries. So varus valgus is usually 0 to 6 degrees on both the sides, but the HK is accepted to be 0 to 3 degrees. So these are the boundaries which we have more often started practicing these. We were always going up to 3 degrees of varus on the tibia, but now we are comfortable going up to 5 degrees. But obviously we will do the patient selection very clearly. Another important thing is how you rotate the femur. The values that you will see, especially based on the Mako system, are all values which are relative to the transepicondylar axis. So we have to define the starting point, whether it's mechanical or kinematic. and the endpoints based on the final gaps or laxity patterns. So you can see on the left, you're looking at a functional alignment which is starting from a kinematic start point. So in this, you can see the femur is already positioned at, the tibia is at 5 degrees of varus and the femur is at 2 degrees of valgus. So that is giving us a HK of 3 degrees. So with this, you can run through the plan and then you can assess your gap laxity and balance according to this. In this, what we can see is that the CPAC is maintained and you are maintaining the joint line. So you can see again with very minimal changes in the component positioning, you're going to attain balance here. And on the right side, you can see the varus on the femur or the varus on the tibia and the rotation compared to the transepicondylar axis are all kept according to the mechanical start point. And you're having some medial tightness and lateral laxity. You're adjusting the coronal positioning of the implants now to balance the knee finally. So this I think we have covered in reasonable detail in the morning, how the kinematic start points actually recreates the oblique joint line better than a mechanical start point. And you have this paper from Gavin Clark from Australia, which was recently published in the Journal of Arthroplasty, where they found a very significant difference in PROMs at short-term follow-up with a kinematic start point where the joint line was maintained. So functional advantages, you can see that you have minimal soft tissue release and you have the requirement or the soft tissue release will actually cause a reduced amount of pain in the post-operative period. This is our experience with functional alignment versus mechanical alignment, with almost half the number of soft tissue releases required with functional alignment to balance the knee. We found that early post-operative pain and range of movement was definitely better with functional alignment. So take home, it's a balance-driven strategy which has to be done with computer-assisted or robotic technology. The starting point can be kinematic or mechanical. And when you start with a mechanical, you'll balance the knee very well, but you'll end up compromising the joint line obliquity. If you start with a kinematic start point, you balance the knee, but you maintain the joint line, which has very good outcomes. And this has given better PROMs. So you have to know your starting point, know your boundaries, and then it's essentially you're playing with the balance. So just an insight into today's case before we go into the surgery, where they will show you the effect of all this on the, the gap captures. So this is how we pre-plan on the CT-based imaging, where you have 0 valgus or valgus on the femur and tibia. The external rotation is set to 0. These measurements of 8 millimeters, 7 millimeters of the lateral tibia, 8 millimeters of the medial posterior and medial distal are preset values given to us by the Stryker technicians, which we change for the sake of balancing. You can see that the flexion is decided to prevent any notching. The slope can be matched to the native tibial slope, and we will be taking decisions based on the gaps we assess. So this is a pure kinematic alignment. You can see that 7.5 varus on the tibia, which is obviously probably mostly unacceptable to most surgeons, and valgus of 2. And you can see that usually restricted kinematic or kinematic always places your femur component in a degree of internal rotation as compared to mechanical alignment. So here the HK is 5.5 degrees of varus. So probably people who are doing pure or unrestricted kinematic would proceed with this sort of a plan. You would not require any soft tissue releases ideally in this scenario. So this is how you restrict it. We have reduced from 7.5 to 5 because the limit of the tibial or femoral positioning is 5 degrees. So 5 minus 2 will give you an overall alignment of 3 degrees, which is acceptable based on the HK boundaries of the functional alignment. So this is essentially going to be balancing from pure kinematic. So you're coming down essentially to a restricted kinematic part. So this is how the video runs. So in this, essentially what you need to look at is how we are progressing to change the component positioning. This is before we have assessed any gaps. And more importantly, with the aid of image-based techniques, as you make any changes to the component positioning, it is possible for you to review how the parameters are restored, especially with regards to the anterior offset, posterior offset, and the relationship to the trochlea, which are very important. So as long as this trochlear relationship is maintained, the chances of having patellofemoral complications is minimized. You have a detail of how you're matching the anterior cortex of the femur to restore the anterior offset. And as you scroll through the CT scan, it is possible to understand how you have restored your posterior condylar offset also. So with this, we can hand over to the theater and go ahead with the live surgery based on this. Thank you.